Hi, it's Steve with Coin Stuff I Like, and this time I'm bringing you a video about the coins in Exonumia from the world's Columbian Exposition that took place in 1893. And what I want to do is I want to show you some of the coins that I have in my collection relative to the world's Columbian Exposition, but also give you a little bit of background. And while I'm doing that, I definitely want to point out uh, Frostbite Coins, Frosty's YouTube channel. If you haven't been there, check it out. In particular, if you like this topic, he's doing a fantastic series on the U.S. commemorative coinage. And he's done a part one, part two of the commemorative series, and then he's going into a deeper dive on each of them. And so he's already done the Columbian Exposition. So definitely check out those videos. There's the link. I will put the link down in the description of this video. And definitely check it out. So let's go into my take on the World's Columbian Exposition and its coins in Exonumia. The World's Columbian Exposition was conceived in 1891, 1892, sort of given the stamp of approval in 1892. And the purpose was to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Columbus's 1492 voyage to the New World. And they sort of missed the mark because they didn't open in 1892. They dedicated the area, the land where the exposition was going to be, which was lakefront in Chicago. They dedicated it in 1892, but the exposition didn't actually open until May 5th and ran until October 31st of 1893. So it was just a little bit off in terms of being exactly 1892, 400 years. But it still was a fantastic exposition. If you want more details on the exposition, I encourage you to look at it. There's a lot of firsts and great things that did happen there, and a lot of interesting twists and turns as well. But what I want to go into, rather than details of the exposition itself, is the fact that as a consequence of this exposition, the U.S. Mint produced its first commemorative coinage, and the other exonumia, like this ticket you see in the lower left. And after researching this video, I actually went out and purchased a ticket. So I added that to my little collection of coins in exonumia relative to the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893. So let's look at the U.S. Mint's first commemorative coinage. And I'm going to throw all three of these in, and we call them commemorative coinage, and the first of the U.S. Mint commemorative coinage, because it started a classic commemorative period in the early 1900s. For commemorative coinage. All of them were half dollars. This was the only quarter dollar, the only quarter produced as a commemorative coinage, a classic commemorative. So we'll come back to that one, but let's talk about these half dollars. All three of these were, at the time, they were called souvenir dollars because they are in part, they're souvenirs of the World's Columbian Exposition. They were sold there at the exposition. They're minted in Philadelphia, but sold there at the exposition. Each one of these were sold for a price of $1. Uh, and so that was 2 times face for the half dollars, and 4 times face for the $quarter. They're all made out of 70 or 90% silver, as was silver coinage at the time, and they're souvenirs sold there at the exposition. One side note: the in 1893, there was a rather significant economic depression that occurred in 1893. So a dollar went a long way back in those days, and there were folks that did not want to pay 2 times or 4 times face for a souvenir. So the sales of these were not quite as robust. The whole intention of the sales is to, in part, finance the exposition. There was building and there was operational costs. And so this was in part to finance the exposition. And the sales were a little bit softer than hoped for. So the let's go into these half dollars. The half dollar was approved by Congress in 1892. Then there was some back and forth on the designing that was going to be used for the obverse and reverse. Eventually, they settled on a design concept by Olin Warner, and then Charles Barber, who was chief engraver of the mint at the time, took over the design and engraving of the obverse, which is a portrait of Columbus from the side, and it says United States of America, Columbian $50. And the reverse was designed by George T. Morgan, who designed the Morgan dollar and became the chief engraver of the mint after Charles E. Barber's death in 1917. So there's some heavyweights involved with the production of this coin. Morgan's reverse was, it said World's Columbian Exposition, Chicago, and then the date at the bottom. So after this back and forth on the design, they actually got into production in the latter months of 1892. And when the calendar flipped, they changed the date to 1893 and continued minting with everything else otherwise the same. And let's go a little bit deeper. Before I go into these numbers here, let's go a little bit deeper into the production of these half dollars. So they initially struck 5 million of these half dollars in total, combined for both years. 1 million in 1892 dates and 4 million in 1893 dates. Again, this is they started these in the latter half of 1892 and continued on into 1893. But as I said, because of there's also a little criticisms of these designs. I read one commentary said, "Oh, this looks like Sitting Bull." Another commentary said, "This looks like a fishing pole hanging off the back of the ship, Santa Maria." And so there's a little criticism of the designs, although the designers were very happy with these designs. And then there's the economic aspect. So only 358,000, just over 358,000 were sold. All right, so a lot less than 5 million. And as you can imagine, the 1892s were probably a little bit more desirable by people that were collecting these souvenirs or buying these souvenirs. And so these sold a lot more robustly than the 1893s. Just look, they struck 1 million in 1892s, and the published mintage is 950,000. So that means only 50,000 of them were melted, basically, of the 1892. So far more desirable to purchase one of those. The 4 million of the 1893s, the published mintage is only 1,550,000 plus, right? So there's a lot of these that were melted essentially. So if there were 358,000 plus sold, that means that there's 4,600,000 that did not sell. And like I said, to the chagrin of the people that wanted to finance, in part, finance through the sales of these souvenir coins. Of that 4,600,000, about 2.5 million were melted. And when all was said and done and the fair was closed up, they had these surplus of unsold coins. The ones that weren't melted were put into circulation. So about 1.1 million, about 1 million were placed into circulation of these half dollars. So so consequently, that means that the ones that are in mint state, again, because more of the 1892s were sold than the 1893s, a lot of these that were put into circulation were actually these 1893s. And you can see that in the estimated survival. The estimated survival at this point in time of the original mintage, published mintage for the 1892 is 300,000 in all grades, but 45,000 in mint state. Compare that to the 1893, where we know they struck 4 million, and they actually had a higher published mintage, just over $1.5 million, or 1.5 million of these minted. So there's more survival in all grades, 400,000 versus 300 of the 1892, but slightly less, 42,500 survive in mint state. That's because mostly 1893s were thrown into circulation. So that's a little bit of background on those numbers. And when I was digging into this, it was pretty interesting to me at how many they struck, how many they actually sold, and some of these survival numbers. Now to the Isabella quarter, which is also a commemorative. It's the only $quarter commemorative of the classic commemoratives. It is the first time that a foreign dignitary, I'll put that in quotes, appeared on a U.S. coin, Queen Isabella. And I believe it's also the first time a real female appeared on the U.S. coin as well. And these were approved by Congress in 1893, in the spring of 1893. This is on request of the Board of Lady Governors. Now, a little background on that. When the exposition was conceived and was going through channels, no less than Susan B. Anthony was advocating for female administration in the governance or running of the exposition. And that was approved as well, approving a Board of Lady Governors for the World's Columbian Exposition. And the Board of Lady Governors requested the government to allow them to have their own commemorative or souvenir coin, and their preference was to have a female motif, so to speak, both obverse and reverse. And that was approved by Congress in the spring of 1893. Again, these are sold for $1, and that's 4 times face, of course. The obverse and the reverse were designed by Charles E. Barber, who is the chief engraver of the mint. And the obverse says United States of America, 1893, the date. And the reverse says Board of Lady Governors, Columbian $quarter. So let's look a little bit deeper into those numbers that we see here. And there were just over 40,000 of these struck. And so the published mintage is 24,214. That means about 15,800 were melted when it was all said and done, because they weren't all sold for $1 a piece in a time of economic depression. We do know that about 15,000 were sold at the exposition, and that means about 9,200 were not sold but remained in the mintage figures. That means that these were retained by connected people, and maybe some of them went into circulation, but the bottom line is that 9,200 above what was sold was retained and in the published mintage figures. And most of these were sold as a souvenir. Not many of them went into circulation. The estimated survival is 20,000 in all grades and 16,500 in mint state. So there's a little background on that one. This one, because of the low mintage, these are a little bit pricier than the halves to obtain at this point in time. And of course, it all depends on grade, but in general, these are a little bit pricier because of the low mintage of the quarters. So let's take a look at what I have in my collection, the representation of these coins and exonumia in my collection. The first one is the 1892, which you see here, and the estimated survival in mint state. This is MS62 in an annex holder. The estimated survival is 45,000, and this coin actually has some repunched date varieties. FS 301, FS 302, FS 303. Now, the FS 303 has been delisted from the most current cherry pickers guide. So really, there's only a FS 301, FS 302 that are recognized currently in Cherry Picker's Guide and by PCGS. So you know, I you know me, I go, well, if there's a variety, let me just check my coin and see if I happen to have it, because I didn't buy it for the purpose of RPD. It was just a standard label holder, but I looked at it, and sure enough, it is the FS 301. You can see the remnants of the 2 here and the 9 here. So this coin that I have is actually an FS 301. And I'm leaning towards sending this back in to have it attributed, just to have that on the label. But it's always nice to if you buy a coin, check it because you might find a nice recognized variety. So the next one is the 1893 version, and this one here, the survival in mint state, is 42,500. This is an MS-62 as well, in an annex holder as well. This coin has an RPD and an FS 301 for an 1893. So this has an RPD. I checked it. It does not have the RPD, which is no big deal for me. I wasn't expecting it. The other one was an unexpected, pleasant surprise. But as I looked at this, the strike is very crisp. It's a very good, strong strike for this particular coin. Then the next one in my collection, and the one that I started it actually, is this Dan Carr Moonlight Mint piece, which he produced in 2023, which is 130 years after the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893. And these were struck on 1893 Columbian Exposition $50. So the genuine $50 was used, and these were overstrikes. This is die pair 1, which has, instead of Columbus's portrait, it has the Spanish crest on it. The language is still the same. It's World's Columbian Exposition, this says voyage, so emphasizing celebration of the voyage, 1492, and it's dated 1891 because this is a fantasy piece, of course. The mintage is 105. There's only 105 of these Dan Carr pieces with die pair 1 with the Spanish crest reverse. He also did a die pair 2, which has a skull and crossbones reverse, and I think it's nice to have this in terms of the fantasy piece dated 1891. But I think the removal and use of a different design instead of the Columbus portrait is more of a commentary to the more recent rewriting of history with regard to the person Columbus. Even though this was an exposition celebrating the voyage of Columbus as a Columbian exposition. But nevertheless, Columbus is still there. So if you want, you might look close at your screen, and you can see that the ghost of the original 1893 Columbian Exposition coin, the host image of Columbus is, you can see the outline. So you can see the nose here, you see the head a little bit here, the hair coming back down here, and the bust. So there's a little bit of host residual of Columbus. So even though Dan Carr tried to erase Columbus from the World's Columbian Exposition coin, Columbus is still there. Now, besides these actual $50 and fantasy $50, there are, of course, the Isabella quarter, which I don't have in my collection, and I probably will look into getting it at some point in time when the price is right. But the Columbian Exposition produced a lot of medals. Exonumia. I showed you the ticket at the beginning of the video, but they also produced medals, which has some brilliant designs, beautiful designs. Now, this one here is the official medal. So this was engraved by George T. Morgan, both obverse, reverse, and struck at the exposition in the U.S. government building in the Treasury Department exhibit. So the obverse says U.S. government building, and then it has a bunch of dimensions down here in the smaller print. And it has a depiction of the U.S. government building here. The reverse says Treasury Department and United States Mint exhibit within the building and the Treasury Department exhibit. World's Columbian Exposition, Chicago, 1893. So this is the official medal. This one is HK 155, which is the small letters. And there's an HK 154 that has large letters, and the U.S. government building in larger letters. This is the smaller letters, which is less common than the one with the large letters. There's a number of different. There's gilt, and this is a bronze. I don't know the mintage. I've looked and searched, but I do know that the small letters HK 155 is less common than the HK 154 with the large letters, and about a 2-to-1 ratio. The 154-2 and the 155-1, a 2-to-1 ratio for those. So it's a little less common. This is the one I have in my collection. Within the HK 155, there's low flags and high flags. Just slightly different designs, but they're still distinguished by large letters or small letters. Now, this is the one I have in my collection. That's probably the extent I'll go into the metal side, the Exonumia side of collecting. This one is an MS-62 in an annex holder, which is nice symmetry of those MS-62s from the originals. But there were other medals. I mean, different exhibits, different governments that were exhibiting at the exposition. There are lots of medals that were produced. So, for example, this one was Wilhelm Mayer in Germany. They produced this one with a side portrait of Liberty. Looks a lot like Morgan's design with the pterygium cap. And it had Columbus landing on the reverse, 1492, and some inscription here, which I didn't bother to record. But it's a beautiful design. This one has many. They came in different sizes. There was gilt, there was silver, there's just plain bronze, etc. So there were a lot of different varieties of this one produced with that design. But it's a beautiful design. This one here was the HK 223. This was this is one that was designed by St. Gaudens here on the obverse, and Barber, Charles Barber, on the reverse. And it was, designed for this company to distribute. And beautiful artwork here. This one, Henry Ziering designed this one with a Columbus portrait. Looks pretty high relief, and the Santa Maria on the reverse, really nice font. And then the Henning Ryden one this medal was Columbus on the obverse, and then all the presidents of the United States on the reverse. I mean, just incredible art. So I'll let you search those out on your own. I mean, you might look at Numista, the website, and once you're there, look into the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893, and they'll have all the different medals. Or you can go to Jeff Shevlin's so-called dollar site, and he has lists by various expositions, including the World's Columbian Exposition. Check those out. I even found one, a collector that I happen to know that had collected all the different varieties of this one, and had a sort of a display on a web collector's site, and that was fantastic. So I don't have these, but I wanted to talk about them because they're just incredibly beautiful. So what I've done is I've put in sort of a sampling of what I consider like the essentials, like the original $50, which were souvenir coins, but we call them classic commemoratives, the very first commemorative halves, the official medal, one of the modern excellent fantasy pieces from Dan Carr, a ticket which is not depicted here, a ticket to the fair, and then eventually, because of the research I've done on this, I think I have to fill this out with one of those Isabella quarters when the price is right. So thank you for joining me on allowing me to share some of the coins in my collection from the World's Columbian Exposition, and also learn a little bit more about these coins. Remember, be smart about what you buy, but buy stuff you like. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.